Sitting there fighting a battle that was over when I had to relocate. You see, I ain't much for letting go. No, baby, I gotta hold on. Cause trials, tribulations, and relationships have all made me strong. Oh, girl, I cry. These tears that I shed on the trail to bring you home. Oh, girl, I cry. Mama told me that a man's own tears can make him strong. Oh, girl, I cry. I'll sit around here and wait for you to come home. I'll cry for you. I'll cry. I'll cry.
Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowances made for fair use for purpose such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statutes that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips in the balance of the favor of fair use.
Black leaves in the Mississippi fire. Black leaves in the Mississippi choir. Black leaves on the Mississippi land. And we've got cotton, we've got sons and daughters, we got grit and glory, we've got money stories, we've got strength like towers, we got hope and power. God made woman with an iron's hand, raised her up on heaven's land. God made woman with an iron's hand, raised her up on heaven's land. Strength like towers, we got hope and power. God made woman with an iron's hand, raised her up on heaven's land.
Welcome to today's Black History Bite, part 1 of Zora Neale Hurston. Zora Neale Hurston is the genius of the South. She was one of the fiercest writers of her day, but few know her dark history. From personal heartbreak to public scandal and beyond, Hurston faced every curveball life threw her way. She was a prolific and controversial author, but sadly not even her blazing intelligence could save her from her devastating fate. Born in Notsaluga, Alabama in 1891, Zora Neale Hurston had an unusual upbringing where she was only 3. Her sizable family moved to Eatonville, Florida, the first all-Black town in the United States. This allowed Hurston and the rest of her community to live as they desired, in many ways escaping the prejudices of the outside world. Unfortunately, a tragedy altered the course of her life, suddenly and irrevocably. I want to thank you for your interest in Black History Bites. And it's not because the month of February is coming. It's because we need to know about our history. A lot of us, especially with book bans and everything else that is going on, who knows if we're going to have access to this information, but we need to. But I digress. Let me continue the story of Zora Neale Hurston. Hurston was only 13 when her mother passed and her father remarried the very next year. It was all downhill from there. Her new stepmom had no time for her, and eventually her father shipped her off to a boarding school in Jacksonville. As if that wasn't bad enough, the next thing he did was absolutely unforgivable. He stopped paying her tuition. With the lack of support, poor Hurston had no choice but to leave school alone with only herself to depend on. The young girl went to drastic measures to keep herself afloat. Faced with her terrifying new independence, Hurston took up any odd jobs that came her way. She worked as a waitress in a nightclub, a manicurist in a black-owned business with a purely white clientele, as well as the maid for the lead singer in the Gilbert and Sullivan musical. But despite all of these new experiences, the true desires of her heart lay elsewhere. At 26, Hurston was too old to qualify for free admission to high school, and so she came up with a single solution. She shaved 10 years off of her age in her application. After that, she decided to keep 1901 as her birth year. With her high cheekbones and playful yet penetrating eyes, she looked young enough to pass as a 16-year-old. After this little deception, Hurston was all set to pursue her dreams. But what would lies comes back to haunt her. Thankfully, no one discovered Hurston's brilliant white lie. After graduating from high school, she made her way to Howard University, a historically black college in Washington, D.C. True to her outgoing nature, she became involved in various activities on campus. She was one of the first initiates of the college sorority and co-founded the campus' first student newspaper. Her writing skills earned her a spot in writer-philosopher Alan Locke's literary club, The Stylist, after she wrote her first short story. But these achievements were just the tip of the iceberg. Bigger and better things awaited her. Hurston was one smart cookie. She left Howard in 1924, and the very next year she won a scholarship to Barnard College of Columbia University. She impressed the founder of the college with her intellect and sharp wit, and the rewards were decadent. She was the only black student in the college, destined to become Barnard's first black graduate. Her degree in anthropology and her work in this field spilled over into her writing too. But this was only the beginning. While studying at Columbia, Hurston put down roots in Harlem, in Manhattan. She became an integral part of the Harlem Renaissance, which aimed for the intellectual and cultural revival of African Americans. Her writing established her as an irrepressible voice for the movement, especially after her essays were published in The New Negro, a literary magazine. The New Negro's founder was Alan Locke. Many considered Locke as the dean of the Harlem Renaissance, so it helped that he became friends with Hurston. In fact, her open personality was a total game changer. Hurston was many things, but she was not an introvert. She loved having people around, and her apartment became a place where everyone congregated to sound off ideals and have passionate discussions. Furnished with stuff her friends donated to her, the Hurston home was a warm, welcoming space with an open door policy, but despite the hubbub of her personal life, she remained completely dedicated to her craft. She often slipped away from the party to go right in her bedroom, but this didn't mean she was a shrinking violet. Hurston's larger than life personality, wit, and spirit probably had something to do with the fact that her mother, while alive, had always encouraged her kids to jump at the sun. Her sense of humor and intelligence helped her win hearts and make friends. And she was the life of the party in the days when she opened her home to like minded writers and intellectuals. After over a decade of hardship, it finally seemed like things were working out in Hurston. But before long, she got the opportunity of a lifetime. Not many get to talk to people who lived through an important, though tragic, part of history. Hurston got the opportunity to interview Cujo Lewis, supposedly the last survivor of the slave trade. She wrote a length about how he became a captive, his journey to America, his enslavement in Alabama, and his subsequent freedom. She titled the work Barracoon, the story of the last black cargo. Unfortunately, no one wanted to publish it then, but it did achieve a publication eventually, many, many years later. Historical records are a bit fuzzy on the dates, but it seems certain that Hurston worked as a secretary for a while at the Jewish writer of Fanny Hurst. They both met at Opportunity Magazine, first ever literary awards banquet, where Hurston had won an award for her essays, Spunk and Color Struck. Fanny presented her awards and later made her a stunning proposition. She asked Hurston to work for her as her chauffeur and secretary. Of course, the eager writer agreed, and she didn't regret it either. Hurston and Fanny enjoyed each other's company. Fanny was a successful writer at the time and opened a whole new world to Hurston. For the first time in her life, she visited snooty hotels and exclusive cafes. Moreover, Fanny had a delightful sense of humor and proved herself to be a trickster at heart. For instance, she sometimes presented her new friend Hurston as visiting royalty, laughing behind the backs of the anxious hotel staff. Hurston's path would soon diverge from Fanny, but she always remembered her affectionately. Perhaps it was also because of some of the other friends she made were really her enemies. At Bernard, Hurston worked and studied with the noted anthropologist Franz Boas, who helped guided her research. However, anthropology wasn't the best paying occupation, as she felt relieved when socialite and philanthropist Charlotte Osgood Mason took her under her wing. Mason patronized several other Black writers, including Hurston's friend Langston Hughes as well. Mason funded Hurston's trips to Florida and Alabama, to find out more about her people's oral traditions and folklore. But Mason wasn't solely driven by a noble desire to help struggling writers. In fact, Hurston quickly discovered that her motives weren't altruistic at all. On the contrary, some of them were downright sinister. Hurston didn't think twice when Mason asked her and other writers she supported to call her godmother. And really, what's in a name? Surprisingly, though, she didn't hear alarm bells when the godmother made them all sign a paper stating that all their research would legally belong to her and they would need her permission to use it elsewhere. It was such a shady move, but luckily Hurston's greedy godmother didn't trap her forever. Some critics felt Hurston's financial dependence on Mason influenced her to subconsciously add Mason approved themes and tropes to her writing. Thankfully, this didn't last forever. Down the road, Hurston found other means to support her writing, as did her friend Langston Hughes. Hurston and Hughes shared more than a patron, though, but they didn't help one bit when their relationship went south. When Hurston first moved to Harlem, she didn't know many people. It helped that she got along with her neighbor and he became her first friend there. Poet Langston Hughes introduced her to Harlem Renaissance crowd, and there's no looking back. Their things would have been great between the two of them if they hadn't made a monumental mistake. Hurston and Hughes had already worked together to publish a literary magazine titled Fire. Though the magazine fizzled out after a few editions, the two friends decided to write a play together. Hurston came up with the idea because although their writing styles were different, they both wrote about the Black perspective. This marked the beginning of the end. Hurston and Hughes began brainstorming on their first and last folk play together. They titled it Mule Bone and worked on it together. But also, whenever they were on their own, each started to feel they'd done the most of the work and play deserved to be in their name only. So, as a result, both of them had their own version copyrighted. Sadly, the end of the collaboration also meant the end of the Hurston Hughes friendship. The play remained unpublished for a long time, even after both its writers had passed. Finally, in 1991, after Hurston's rediscovery, Mule Bone saw the light of day. In case you were wondering, Hurston did find time to meet a special someone during her busy schedule. She married Herbert Sheen, whom she met at Howard, where he just started teaching. He left teaching to become a jazz musician and would eventually leave music to become a physician. But though the couple got along quite well, they did not find their happily ever after. Hurston and Sheen lived together for over a year, but quickly realized it wasn't meant to be. For some reason, though, Hurston delayed the divorce, and so the marriage officially ended a few years later in 1931. But that didn't mean she's given up on love. In fact, it wasn't long before she met a Prince Charming destined to rock her world. And even better, he was nothing like the first husband. I want to thank you for stopping by to part one of Zora Neale Hurston's story. It's our Black history that keeps it alive. Please, if you have an opportunity, Collect some of her books and her works. It should be very interesting, as I know that Hurston herself was a hoodoo practitioner. Very interesting. All right, be well, stay safe, Ashe, and deep bow, and I shall see you all very, very soon. And remember, we are our history. Keep it alive for our children. Ashe.
Sitting there fighting a battle that was over when I had to relocate. You see, I ain't much for letting go. No, baby, I gotta hold on. Cause trials, tribulations, and relationships have all made me strong. Oh, girl, I cry. These tears that I shed on the trail to bring you home. Oh, girl, I cry. Mama told me that a man's on tears to make him strong. Oh, girl, I cry. I'll sit around here and wait for you to come home. I'll cry for you. I'll cry.